Everybody, it's your boy Joe, the Wealth Architect. I have a question. When you think about the stock market, do you think of it as risky? Do you think of it as a place to gamble, like it's where people go to gamble and try to make a quick win? I'm here to tell you that while there is risk, right? That there's risk in all aspects of life, as we all know. I live in New York City. Just being in the subway station is risky these days, right? And that's no exaggeration. And so the idea that investing in the stock market inherently is risky is something that we need to rethink, especially for people who have done time in jail or prison. The real risk is not investing. The real risk is not investing. What do I mean by that? Particularly for people who have served lengthy periods of time, 10 years, 15, 20, 30 or more years. I've met a few people who have served 50 years in prison. Now you tell me what the risk is of not investing after doing decades in prison and coming home or being released with no savings whatsoever, or certainly no retirement savings or older age savings, right? You don't have to retire, but we all gonna get older. And so whether you are 50, 60, or 70, we are living longer these days, thank God, to advances in medical technology and also people being more health conscious, right? So that's a good thing. And so now we're living longer, which means that we need more money to live off of, right? So if we don't invest out of fear, out of some misconception of what investing is about, if it's as a result of procrastination, whatever the reason, if we do not invest, at the end of the day, we are putting ourselves at risk of not having a comfortable living in our older years. So that is the real risk here. And while we can't eliminate all risks when it comes to investing, we can minimize them. We can minimize them. There are ways to minimize it, right? And so, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the main point I really want to get across, and I can't emphasize this enough, is that for those of us like myself, did 25 years in prison, right? Been home 9 years now, and been a student of personal finance for the past 30 years. And so I know better. I know that if you don't invest, then you can predict that you won't go broke, you will stay broke, right? You will stay broke. That's the risk, right? It's not about going broke in some future time. It's about being broke now, or relatively broke, and staying broke because you didn't invest. I didn't say save, you didn't invest. When you save, your money is not working for you. It's working for the bank, right? You put your money in the bank, maybe you get 1%. In a good year, you might get 2%, right? On CD or something like that, 3% or whatever case might be. That's still not investing. That's still saving, right? Because inflation, or the general rise in prices, right? How things go up. Bottle of water costs $1 one day, and then due to inflation, now it's $1.50 or $1.25. So your same dollar doesn't go as far. And so a 3% on a CD is not gonna go far either, right? So the name of the game is to make money work for you as opposed to you working for money. That is the name of the game when it comes to wealth building. That is the name of the game when it comes to money in general, right? And so again, the real risk when it comes to investing is not investing. we have to have a plan for our financial futures. That's what I'm really trying to drive home here. And this is not rocket science. It does not take a whole lot to get started. It does not take a lot to maintain habits of investing for the long term. And I put emphasis on the long term because this is not a short-term proposition. Investing should be a lifestyle, right? It should be a lifestyle. It doesn't happen overnight, but it should be a lifestyle. For example, I'm on my way now heading to the gym. It's not optional, right? It's lifestyle. Lifestyle. If I want to live as healthy as I can, then I have to eat right. I have to work out, right? And after a while, it doesn't become work, right? It doesn't become work. I enjoy working out. And as they say, no pain, no gain. But it's the same thing when it comes to money. It's not so much pain, but it's sacrifice. It's delayed gratification, right? At the end of the day, it's not about trying to have everything you want every day for the rest of your life unless you've earned it, unless you've put in those reps, as they say, when it comes to investing, right? Which means that you've planned it, you've executed, and that's what you do. It's become a part of your lifestyle. Otherwise, you're putting yourself at risk of being 60 years old, 65, 70, or older, and having no savings, no investment, no nest egg, right? What does that look like, right? Well, what that probably looks like is that you may end up living with someone else because you can't afford the rent. You don't have enough income coming in, right? It's just really that simple. Or it may mean that you are on public assistance, right? That's not a good proposition, right? So that you're depending on the government to give you a small amount of money to live off for the rest of your life. That is no way to live, especially after having done time in prison and being at the mercy of the government, right? So it's one form of prison, a physical prison of incarceration, to a financial prison of depending on the government for a check. It's not the way to go, and it's certainly not what I promote, and that's why I've developed a 3-part framework, the SSI Method, 3-part framework for building wealth, for justice-impacted people, spending plan, savings plan, and investing plan. 3 parts. It's not complicated, right? Have a plan for how you're going to spend your money, divvying it up in terms of wants and needs, right? I'm oversimplifying. A savings plan for short-term goals, right? Whether it be vacation, whether it be travel, whether it be for school, whatever the case might be, and an investing plan, a long-term investing plan, 10 years, 15, 20, or more years, right? And a plan for passing on wealth, right? So that's what the SSI method is about. And as I mentioned in another video, for people who have done time, it really behooves us. It is really important that we have an economic blueprint, right? This stuff is not provided during incarceration. Very few things that are really of value is taught or given while in prison. That's just the truth, right? You have to, in terms of rehabilitation, in terms of coming out a better person, that is on the individual. Anybody who's done time knows that, right? So we can't look to the government, we can't look to the state to help us in any way in terms of coming out a more skilled person, a more prepared person for life on the outside. It is on us. And that is what the SSI method is all about. You can get a copy of, or you can download the free first chapter of my book, The New SSI Method, by clicking on the link below. And you can begin to see how we need to think about money differently, reframe how we think about all these issues. Now let me get back to the issue of risk. Risk, like I said, is we need to reframe how we think about risk, right? Instead of thinking about risk in terms of losing money in the stock market in whether it's the short term or long term, think about it in terms of what you want your life to look like in the future. Investing is a future focused game. It's not about right now. It's not about instant gratification. That's how many of us have been taught, right? And so we're not at fault for that. But investing is about the future. It's about thinking about companies or investments that will pay off in the future, right? I mean, that should be obvious, but a lot of times I think we think that we invest one day and then 6 months later, we all of a sudden we're wealthy. We're rich, right? It's not the way the game works, right? That's not the way life works, right? So again, I just want to drive home the point that it's not investing that is risky. It is not investing, not having a nest egg, not having retirement savings or savings in our older age that is risky, because we thought that we'll put it off to another day, right? Another year. We thought that I'd rather keep my money in the bank. At least I know where it's at. Yeah, you know where it's at, but it's not growing. It's not growing, and you're getting older, and your costs, especially medical costs, is going up and up and up, right? So that is a failing proposition, right? So now let me get to how we can minimize our risk in 3 steps. Again, I'm oversimplifying. I'll delve deeper in other videos to come, but the 3 main things are as follows. The first thing is to reframe risk, the idea of risk. Reframe it. What do I mean by that?
That's so nice.
Rethink how we define risk. It's just that simple. Rethink how we define risk. So what that means is that instead of seeing risk as simply as just losing money, right? Meaning you put $100 in, you invest $100 or $500, and your concern is losing that $100 or $500. Instead of thinking so simply as that, think of risk as what happens if I hold on to the $100, I put it in the bank, and I make $101 a year later. So now, you don't make 101, but you make $1, right? Because you got 1% on your money, 1%. So 1% of $100 is $1. So you bust your ass all year, all week, all month. You put $100, you set it aside, and it made you $1. That's what the bank did. That's their thank you, right? So to me, that is risky because, as you know, from one year to the next, prices have gone up for most things more than $1. So although you have $101, it spends like it's $98 or $99. Your dollar has lost value, right? It's not worth as much. It's not worth as much because it has not been put to work. It has not been invested, right? So it's just, that's the way inflation works on an everyday basis. And so let's use another scenario. This one is worse. So you don't save the $100, you spend it. You spend it. So it's certainly not growing. It's certainly not working for you. It's working for someone else. You've given the money to someone else so they can build their financial future, right? And so that is even worse than not saving at all. It's spending, just spending the money, and especially if, and I don't mean, obviously we have to spend money, but what I mean is spend it on the latest sneakers, the latest phone, on eating out for the 3rd time this month, right? That's what I mean, right? That is a waste, total waste. You can't get that money back, it's gone. You can get more money, but what does that mean? Usually means that you have to work more to get that money, right? Because you're not investing, so you're not living off of money that made money, right? You are living off of money that you had to use your time, energy, your life source, right, for, right? So that is a bad proposition. So we don't want to just spend. Saving is going in the right direction. Now let's look at investing. With investing, let's say you put your money in an S&P 500 fund. What is that? It's an index fund. It's a basket of stocks. In this case, the largest 500 companies in the U.S., all in one basket, and you can invest one time or numerous times and have a piece of that entire basket. On average, the S&P 500 as a index, right, as a basket of stocks has grown between 9 and 10% a year. 9 and 10%, right? Doesn't mean you don't have to do anything physically like investing in 500 companies. You invest in one index fund, and there is the potential to earn, on average, 9 or 10% a year. So what does that mean? Let's say 10%. You put $100 in, right? You don't have to look at it, every day, stress yourself out, but you put $100 in to an index fund, S&P 500 index fund, and then the next year, instead of it being instead of earning $1, you've earned $10. $10. It's a lot better than $1, right? So now instead of having $101 as you would in a savings account, you have $110. And then if you keep investing, right, then that compounds and grows quickly over time. It grows. Trust me, it grows. So the first step is 1, 2, 3. First step is to redefine risk. Think of it as not having money when you need it in the future. That is risky, right? So the second step is to invest in an S&P 500 index fund, right? You can go with a Vanguard, for example, VOO. If you Google Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, exchange traded fund, and you put VOO, all you need to put is VOO in the web browser on Google, and it'll come up, and you'll see that it's a low expense ratio, so it doesn't cost a lot for you. In other words, you're not paying a lot in terms of expenses for having the fund or being in the fund, right? And two, another one is Fidelity. Fidelity, I invest with Fidelity as a broker. Fidelity's, I believe it's FIAIX or something like that. It's an S&P 500 company or index fund as well. And again, very low expense ratio, and there's no minimum for either of those, right? There's no minimum, which means you can invest $100. $100 you can get started. It could be $400, whatever the case might be, but there is no minimum required for you to invest. So there's no excuse. We could not go to lunch this time, or spend on some bag or shoes or watch or whatever the case might be, and we can make our first investment. So number 3 is to automate. By automate, I mean that once you make the first investment, it doesn't stop there. As I said earlier, this is a lifestyle, right? You do something once, that's not a lifestyle, right? That's one action, right? But it's not a lifestyle. You got to do it consistently. So by automating, you can have it so that whatever brokerage firm you use, I mentioned Fidelity, there's Charles Schwab, there's Vanguard, there's a whole bunch, right? What you do is basically give instructions to the brokerage account to automate taking out, let's say $50 a week, $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever the case might be. So you don't have to think about it, so that this becomes automatic, right? It becomes a lifestyle of investing. And then before you know it, you will begin to generate wealth over time. I promise you. That's the way this thing works. It's really not complicated. So quick recap. The first step is to rethink how you think about risk, right? From thinking about losing money to now, right? To not having money in the future after having served, in some cases, years or decades in prison. Step 2 is to get started, not with individual stocks, right? With Apple, Target, or any of those, companies, right? Not individual stocks, but an index fund, an S&P 500 index fund of the top 500 companies in America. And then the last step is to automate, right? To put it on autopilot. Do those 3 things, I guarantee you will, over time, begin to build wealth. The longer your money is invested, right, the more likely you are to become very wealthy. And finally, I will just add another tip. Share this with someone else. Share the video, share what we talked about, what I'm talking about in the video, and share it with the young people in your life, right? People who, like when I was in my teens, who was hustling and doing all these other things, thinking that we have to chase money, we have to chase the bag. That's the wrong way to do it. We want money to work for us. We want to attract money. That's the name of the game. So with that said, this is your boy Joe, the Wealth Architect. And until next time, let's get this money.